Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Parul Malhotra, Associate Professor, Jagannath University, Jaipur. In today's video, we will learn about the linear models of development or the linear approaches of development. In the previous videos, we have studied about the concept of development, then development communication, then different approaches towards development communication. Now we'll be studying the models of development communication. So these models have been divided into two parts. That is, one is the linear model and the other is the non-linear. So in this video, I'll be covering the linear models. In the next video, I'll be talking about the non-linear approaches. And in case if somewhere it is mentioned linear approach of development, then you need to mention this Roster's model of the modernization. And if we talk about the non-linear approaches, then you need to talk about the other models that we'll be studying in the next videos. So let us begin with the linear model of development. After the Second World War, the theories that were proposed focused main on the economic growth alone. Growth in the Western countries continued at a faster rate as they were already industrialized. So the path to economic growth was found to be industrialization, where the state can get aid from developed countries and technological innovations can happen, giving opportunity for many. It can even pull laborers from agriculture, as this gives more money at a faster pace than practicing agriculture. The progress was measured in per capita income in this model. The theory of modernization has its focus on two main aspects of development. Students, whenever we talk about the linear model or the linear approach, the only model that comes in the mind is the Roster's model of modernization. And if we talk about the linear approach of development, then also this theory of modernization comes in our mind. So it is the only approach that talks about that development is a one on one process and which happens through modernization. So linear model is equal to Roster's model of modernization, or linear approach is the theory of modernization. The meaning of both the model and the theory of modernization remains the same. So this theory of modernization tries to explain why the poor countries are poor and still remain underdeveloped. Second, it suggests important ideas and concepts to overcome underdevelopment. The important aspect of underdevelopment, according to the modernization theory, in the countries of Asia, Africa, and Latin America are said to be the culture that they follow. Culture was seen as the primary barrier to the development of these nations. The developed nations argued that the tradition and culture followed in the developing and underdeveloped countries are very old and outdated, and holding on to the same culture and tradition even after many years of civilization still prevents these countries from entering the field of development. So this concept actually says that the underdevelopment is happening just because developed country underdeveloped countries are not able to develop because of the culture they follow. This theory blames that the underdeveloped country are too backward, and the culture that they follow is also not modern, and it is also way backward and too traditional, and that is why they are not able to change. That is very outdated and very old, and they are following the same culture and traditions. So they need to change their culture in order to get developed. A simple step towards development put forth by the few modernization theorists was to simply follow the footsteps of the developed countries. They opined that if the underdeveloped countries followed the Western culture and values and also promote the industries of the West in their country, then development is guaranteed in terms of economy as well. So for such a modernization and development to take place, the help of the developed countries is needed in the form of investment and industrialization. So the next step is, the first is that they assumed that the developed countries were following the outdated culture and tradition. Second thing is, if they want to get developed, they should follow the Western culture and values, and also they should promote the industries in their countries so that development can happen. So these are the two things. All the theories put forth by modernization preferred the capitalist, industrialist model of development, which firmly held the belief that the capitalism has the power to push a nation towards development through the process of industrialization. It believed in bringing development by efficient production of goods from the industry. The kind of industrialization that these modernization theorists are talking about refers to large scale production of goods and services rather than cottage industries or small workshops. It is important to understand the term capitalism here. Capitalism refers to the investment of huge sum of money by an individual in any industry so that a huge profit is made out of it by selling those products or goods or services produced in the industry in the market for consumption of the public. So these theorists, that was the idea that was put forth by modernization was that that industrialization should happen, and the lot of importance should be given to the production of goods and services. And it was talking about the capitalism. By capitalism we means investing a lot of money in an industry or in a variety of industries so that the huge profit is made out by selling those products or services which are produced, right? Many scholars and modernization theorists believe that the underdeveloped countries needed the help of the Western societies for their development. There have been many comments and criticism about the most impactful and efficient ways to help the underdeveloped countries. It was firmly believed that help in the form of industrialization and modernization from the Western countries will help the developing countries, since it can make them rethink their tradition and culture and give up the backward thinking. Once they become modernized, the economy of the country will automatically boom. So, what was the idea that was put forth by modernization? Let us do a small recap. The first thing that the modernization says, that the underdeveloped countries were not growing because their culture and tradition were too outdated and old, whereas the developed country were following the up to date culture and tradition. The second thing was the industrialization. They felt that all the underdeveloped countries should follow the footsteps of the developing countries or the developed countries, that is, they should adopt the practice of industrialization. Third was that along with industrialization, emphasis should be given on the capitalism, that is, investing lot of money in industries to produce goods and services, because selling of these goods and services will get them more and more profit. So this is what was proposed by the modernization theory, that one can only grow or develop, one country can only grow and develop if they are modernized, that is, if they are up to date and if they are following the industrialization. And this process of modernization and industrialization, the step by step process, has been explained by Rostos in his 5-step model. So the first stage model is the traditional society, that is subsistence or the barter agriculture. Subsistence or the barter agriculture is that crop is only grown to fulfill the needs of the population, and the rest of the amount is again used to sow, get new crop. It is not done for selling, or the crop is not used for any kind of manufacturing of any products. So by subsistence agriculture, it is growth of products, crop is grown only to just satisfy the living of the population, and that much amount is left which can be used to grow the crops. The second is the barter system. Barter is that people do not trade in exchange of money. Like whenever we are buying something, we always pay it to the shopkeeper, and then shopkeeper pays it to the wholesaler, then it goes to the industry. This is how the money cycle moves, or the trading cycle goes, like, right? But in the barter system, things are being bought in exchange of things only. Like if I am buying something, oil or this, I'm paying a good, not money. This is what barter system says, and this is a very traditional culture that was being followed in the ancient world, in the ancient countries, that people used to buy things in exchange of things only, right? So that was the country is dependent on the rural economy, and that is entirely a traditional society following the old age traditions. Now comes the second stage, that is the transactional stage, where there is a specialization, surpluses, and the infrastructure. Here what happens is that the industrial crop, the industrial goods are used for the production. That is, industries are being set up. Maybe you are set up industry in your country, or maybe you are setting up the industries in the other countries, or the other countries are coming here in your countries and setting up the industries. In any case, what happens is there is a lot of agricultural surpluses, and you are able to use that surpluses for the production of finished goods, that we the products that we get, whether it is oil, whether it is pulses, or whether it is grain or anything, it is mostly the byproduct of the agriculture. I hope you understand that. I need not to go into that. So it is like whenever there is more agriculture produced, it is either exported or it is used for the production of the further goods. So this is what the transactional stage mentioned, that is setting up of the industry in your country or in the other countries, or allowing the other countries to set up their industry here. In that case, what would happen is there would be a cultural exchange. There would be a lot of cultural exchange, and cultural exchange can lead to the westernization. Like in India, it also happened when the foreign countries entered India. Then we had seen massive change in the Indian economy, massive growth in Indian industries and the foreign industries, and there was entire westernization and then globalization happening in the country, taking our country to a next stage. Right, so this is what transactional stage is saying. You start setting up in the takeoff stages when the industrialization is happened. There's a lot of investment in the terms of share markets, in the terms of industries. Then there is a regional growth. When regional growth say, I mean that is growth in the region, not in the religion, the region, that a particular northern region, eastern region, western region, wherever the industrialization happens, obviously the regional growth happens. Why it happens? Whenever there are industries, that means that you have a lot of goods and services, and whenever there are industry, you need a lot of labor to work for it at all the position, not only at the manufacturing level, but you need people at the admin level, you need people at the strategic planning level. That is, industries all generates a lot of industries generate a lot of employment opportunities, and if people are getting money, they are having a better lifestyle, they are having a better lifestyle, they are having better quality of goods and services. This is what takeoff stage says. Then there are a lot of political changes, people are educated, they understand the politics, they understand the systems, and they try to bring the change. Then comes the drive to maturity, that is a lot of diversification is happening, then innovation is happening. Innovation can never happen at stage 2. Why? Because you are just right now settling the industries, you are beginning with the industrialization. Innovation can only happen when you are established in a one particular industry, and then you try to innovate, you try to bring new things, you experiment. You do not experiment at the first stage, you experiment when you are established in something, in any of the fields, and then you try to innovate whether we can have something new or not. Then there is less there is less reliance on import. As you have a lot of surpluses, you are actually exporting the things, as India did at the time of Green Revolution. We had a lot of surplus of the crops, so we were able to actually import it. We had less reliance on imports, and we more rely on exports. GDP can only grow if you have more exports. Then there are a lot of investments. India lies between these two stages, stage 3 and stage 4, and then comes the high mass consumption stage, where you have a lot of consumer oriented durable goods. You are actually flourishing. The service sector is actually dominated. So this is what Roster's model says, that it's a step by step process. So stage 1 talks about the traditional societies of the developing countries predominantly, that follow subsistence farming, in which the production is not motivated by profit. Subsistence farming uses less labors and less productions to meet the basic needs of the people. Since it is not driven by wealth, they do not have much capital to invest in modernization or any industrial technology. At the first stage, there are many cultural barriers too for the process of development. Second is stage 2, the precondition for takeoff. In this stage of development, it is necessary for the companies to invest in the country. In order to attract the investors and also to provide financial aid, the transformation in the field of science and technology, which can improve agriculture, good transportation facility, connecting roads to the city, and good communication facility, enabling connection with the neighborhood cities, were deemed as important in the rural regions for development. Along with this, the westernization, countries can also establish their western factories in the developing countries so that it can aid in development. In this way, they can bring in their practices and Western values in the country. I've already explained this concept of establishing industries in different countries. Then comes the stage 3, takeoff stage. At this stage, the developing countries would have started to experience the economic development in their region. The new practices and Western values would become the norms of the society by now. When the thoughts of modernization imbibe along with the Western industrialization and values, people become willing to invest more in the other markets, increasing the entrepreneurial skills. Thus, the subsistence method of producing goods will slowly move away from the society, replacing urbanization. With urbanization, more wealth is generated, which goes down to the entire population who have now become consumers of new products. They start using the products that are created by the new industries in their homeland and also from the foreign countries. I hope you are able to understand what I have just explained. That is how industrialization helps in development. That is, industrialization leads to urbanization, and then you have more jobs, more money, better goods and services from your country and from other countries also. And you also adopt the Western culture, and you are willing to invest more in the markets, right? Then comes the stage 4, the drive to maturity. At stage 4, industrialization and modernization would have developed at a faster rate and people would have experienced economic growth. With economic growth, there will be more investment taking place in the field of education, media, and birth control. With all the new advancements in economy, there will be more opportunities opening up for the people, and they will want to use it fully to their highest potential so that they can make the most of their lives. And the last stage is the age of high mass consumption. Till stage 4, the production was supplying to the demands of the people, and now in stage 5, the economic growth and mass production are at Western levels. At this stage, there is more economic growth in country, which naturally elevates it to the state of fully developed countries. So I hope you are much clear about these 5 stages, that how it is a step by step process. Now let us understand it with the help of an example. During the 1960s, Indonesia followed the theory of modernization to some extent. The president of the country, Suharto, who was well known as a dictator compared to Hitler, Stalin, and Mao, wanted to try modernization, and hence he encouraged the investment of Western countries in Indonesia. He also accepted loans from the World Bank. Though President Suharto was referred to as one of the worst mass murderers of the 20th century by the report of CIA, his idea of economic transformation and experimenting modernization was praised by the World Bank. His idea of transformation was called as a dynamic economic success, and Indonesia was praised as the model pupil of the global economy. The former President Bill Clinton referred to him as someone who belongs to their way of thinking. That is, by adopting the theory of modernization, the president accepted loans from the World Bank. He also encouraged the investment of the Western countries. And then what happened was there was a lot of westernization and industrialization in Indonesia, which led to the growth of Indonesia. Then let us come to the second example, the eradication of smallpox. Smallpox was a dreadful disease in the underdeveloped countries and developing countries till 1970s. Millions and millions of people around the year 1950s had to give their life to this dreadful disease spread by a virus every year. During the late 1970s, the vaccine which can eradicate smallpox completely was donated to the developing countries by US and Russia. Why this happened? Because US and Russia were developing countries, they were at the level of innovations, they invented the medicine for smallpox, and the exchange between two countries facilitated the exchange of medicine as well, which had saved many lives. But as every coin has two sides, good and bad, heads and tails, or everything has their own pros and cons, so the modernization theory also had its cons along with the pros. And let us discuss the criticism of this modernization approach. The developed countries came up with this modernization approach so that they can justify their position in the Western capitalist countries. It is thought that this thought actually came up from the westernized world, the developed world, the richer countries, right? And why they brought this approach? Because they wanted to justify their position. They wanted to justify their standing as Western capitalistic countries. They wanted to prove them right that yes, we are westernized, we are capitalized, we believe in investments. So this is the modernization theory, and this is this approach that we followed, and that is why we are the world leaders. Most of the developing countries were colonial powers who wanted to show their power to the rest of the world. So, when we deeply look into the practical application of the modernization theory, we can understand that no country, either developing or underdeveloped, has completely followed Rostow's five-stage model. Even if they have followed, it was not done entirely, right? The modernization theory also felt that traditional values of the developing countries are of no use for the development, and their culture, norms, and values will never lead them towards development, which is actually not completely true. India is known for its rich culture and heritage. And if we go as per modernization, then we need to discard our that culture and religion, which obviously we are not going to do at any cost. Now India has a standing position, you can say a very good position in the world, where we are actually respected for our rich cultural heritage. So thus this aspect of modernization is not actually correct. In the developing countries, there were many issues ranging from health to inequality. There were high crime rates and drug abuse. There were also high rates of suicidal cases. The modernization approach never talked about any of this human aspect. Thirdly, the dependency theorists have criticized that whole idea of modernization was only to make rich countries more richer and poor countries poor. Why this happened? Why? Because it emphasized that the Western countries, the developed countries, should establish their industries in the developing countries or the underdeveloped countries. And what would happen if a stronger country establishes its industries in a weaker country? Then obviously they are able to exploit their natural resources and make use of their cheap labor. And in this position, their position in and in this, if this happens, then in this case their position as a richer country would become stronger. So the theorists argued that the modernization theory of development is an indirect way of telling the rest of the underdeveloped and developing countries that they are easy to be exploited. The industrial countries do not have any intention of helping the underdeveloped countries for their economic or social growth. In the name of modernization, there is more harm done than the development in the developing countries. For example, the industrialist force to eradicate the people settled near rivers so that they can build dams for development. They are not paid the due compensation and they are forced to leave their homeland, turning their future to a big question mark. So the modernization ways care believed to cause more damage than good. The model does not take into account any kind of backward movement of any country. So I hope you are clear with the concept of modernization and the Rostov's theory of modernization, and you also understand what are its criticism. Right, now let us come to the next model. It's not a linear model, just a simple approach of the basic need model. This approach is in utter contrast to the modernization theory, the dependency and the world system theory. It shifts the focus away from the proved economics. The concept emerged in 1970s to address the basic requirements of individuals to maintain a decent quality of life. Modernization focused on industrialization, more capital oriented model. Basic need model or basic need theory, they talk about the basic requirements of individuals to maintain a decent standard of life, not capitalism, but the other things what are required to live a decent life, that is of food, clothing, shelter, education, health, sanitation. This approach or this model focused on these human aspect. And if you remember, we had studied the indicators of development, in which the first was obviously GDP and GNP, but there were other indicators also, like human development index, which talked about the literacy levels, the birth and the death ratio, the gender inequality, the happiness index, and then we also talked about the maternity ratio. So these all are important aspects when we talk about development. So this model aimed to eliminate some of the worst aspects of poverty rather than measuring development through GDP or per capita income. The idea was to go beyond mere capital investment towards investment into human resources in the form of equitable distribution of wealth and income, social justice and improvement of facilities for education, health, social security, and so on as salient features. This approach emphasized on basic fundamental needs of people and respect for human rights. Paul Streeton in 1979 summarized the main objectives of the basic need approach as that providing adequate food and clean drinking water, providing a decent shelter, providing education, providing security or livelihood, providing the adequate transportation facilities, help people participate in decision making, and uphold a person's dignity and self respect. So, these approaches or this angle is also required when we talk about development. Mere money, mere industrialization, or capitalization would not work the unless and until until the population is provided with the adequate food and clean drinking water, a decent shelter, education, livelihood, better transportation facilities, roads, electricity, better schools, better hospitals, and people's ability to participate in decision making. That is their awareness towards their human rights, which is very important. And inequality, there should be no inequality of any kind. So this is what basic need model was talking about. The Bariloche Foundation in Argentina 1972 first developed a world model based on the basic needs of people, assuming availability of resources and environmental constraints. This approach was subsequently endorsed by many development theorists. The effort was the welfare of the poor and meeting their minimum basic needs. It was an attempt to address the world poverty by meeting the basic needs of the lowest income groups in terms of providing food, nutrition, education, and housing through employment and income. It was an attempt to deal directly with world poverty by meeting the basic needs of the lowest 40% income groups in the fields of food, nutrition, health, education, and housing through employment and income. In 1976, International Labour Office gave shape to this commitment and adopted the basic minimum need model. The marginalized section of the society was believed to be surviving with minimum resources at their disposal in developing countries. This helped in concluding the preoccupation of the poor is acquiring basis with their income. Where all the focus is on survival alone, participation as a deciding body in the development process is not feasible. So, this model actually focused on the other basic needs for the lowest income group people in the society, in the country, and it focused on providing them with food, nutrition, education, and housing. And this is again a very important aspect. If the population by and large is not healthy, not educated, not living in good condition, if the health system is not good, then obviously a country cannot develop. And I hope we understood the importance of health and sanitation and nutrition at the time of COVID, where all the resources of a country were actually used for saving the lives. There was no markets were shut, there were entire lockdowns, no selling of goods and services was happening. It was just that people's life was of prime importance. It never said that industrialization is bad, but it said along with the industrialization, along with the capitalism, we need to focus on these aspects also, the human aspects also. In this model of development, the participation of individual is a prerequisite in terms of planning. Decentralization is the key towards autonomy of villages, and active village participation helps in proper planning and implementation of development process. So this model suggests two-way communication, both top-down and bottom-up approach. The top-down communication is from government to people to provide awareness and facilities about particular programs, and the bottom up approach is from individual to government for need based program. That is, top down is that government are providing facilities and awareness to the people about whatever they are doing, and the bottom up approach is when the individuals are talking about their needs and their feedback about the things that are happening around. I hope you are clear with the concept of Roster's model of modernization and the basic need model. Thank you so much for watching this video.